go. Waiting. Okay, we're live. Hi, it's the really big class, June 11th. It's amazing. And this is actually our 11th class. And I was doing a little accounting and admin, as they say in this country, and realized that we have had 40 performers so far, really, truly from all over the world. And our guest teachers have been from California to the UK to Canada to today from Germany. So our guest tonight is Elisabeth Kufferath, who was one of the people, I have to say, who was probably the most inspiring to me when I was in conservatory and sitting in our weekly violin classes. And I will never, ever forget sitting and listening to her play the Beethoven Violin Concerto slow movement. And she would land on those impossibly difficult high notes with the most beautiful and pristine intonation, and then either her third or fourth finger, because it didn't really seem to matter which one she landed on, would have this vibrato that just worked exactly like vibrato was supposed to work. I mean, all of the joints just released and were beautiful, and the oscillation was gorgeous, and every single one was different and made you want to just cry. They were so beautiful, and I just am extraordinarily pleased that she's here with us today and is going to help our guests through whatever she has to say to them. So that's my story for today. And I think, Elisabeth, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think we haven't seen each other since our friends Tom and Iris got married. Maybe 20 years ago, something like that. Where we played together, actually. We played a Mendelssohn quartet together for their wedding.
I took Tom's place, didn't I?
No, opposite. No, I took Tom's place.
Oh.
It was really, 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 really fun. I got to play second violin, and I don't think we've been in the same place at the same time since then. But I've certainly really enjoyed, especially in the past few weeks, taking a really deep dive into your YouTube offerings. You are doing extraordinary things with brand new music. The Tetzlaff Quartet always sounds amazing. And this is great. So thank you for being here. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Cecily. That's such a sweet introduction, and I'm very, very happy to be here and to almost be in the same place at the same time.
As close as we can get, anyway. So today we have 4 performers. We have 2 Isabellas, one from Germany, one from the UK, playing Tchaikovsky and Bach, respectively. We have Klara in Austria, playing some Glazunov. And we have Tianxu from California, originally from China, playing some Bach for us. So I think we should just get started and dive into the Tchaikovsky Concerto, which has been definitely one of our favorites in the really big class. And I am personally learning this concerto for the first time, so I'm really looking forward to this. And so let's share Isabella's video.
Is this what we do? We clap. Yeah. Bravo.
Thank you.
That's exciting. I really love the feeling you have for the piece and the excitement you give it, and also you getting a beautiful tone a lot of the time. I really enjoy that.
Thank you.
Is it a piece that you've been working on for a while, or is it fairly new?
Kind of since April-ish. So like when I came here, lockdown started, and then my teacher gave me the piece. So yeah.
That's a good lockdown piece. Enough pages, enough
Yeah.
notes in it. Yeah. It's already very good. And as you were playing, I was thinking we could work on defining some of the themes and characters more explicitly, and also getting the transitions to really transition between themes or sections. Sometimes I find that the two almost get a little bit mixed up. So make sure that you're always transitioning from one section to the next with the places that are that. And so if we take it from the beginning, the very opening is a transition, isn't it, in a way, with the orchestra going. And then you take actually this mysterious atmosphere and bring it to, of course, the first theme, which is so sunny and like a Sunday afternoon walk. So I think if you could really make that transition from the mysterious and kind of eerie atmosphere that you start with, and then blossom as you go. Do you want to try it? Good, yeah. So which note is the turning point for you?
I feel like the it's that kind of dominant seventh. I can't really pick out a specific note out of it, but for me, I feel like it's just that's kind of the chain.
Yeah, you can think of a 7/9 chord, and I was thinking you still have, but here for me the B natural is really where you have found your way out of the sort of the intensity that you can start with. And if you can change your vibrato there too, or rather maybe start with less vibrato at first. So this is less beautiful and more intense in the piano. show me this. Just the most glorious, warm, sunny note.
From where do you want me to play? Just from the beginning again, or
Maybe just try this one note, the B natural. Good. That's the idea. So you're saving for this moment, and then it comes down in steps, doesn't it? So if you can pace this relaxation or the diminuendo so that you really come on where you want. So the theme is the result of this transition. Do you want to try from the B natural? Idea. Also, I liked your timing better this time. The way you slowed down was more organic to me. In the theme itself, I wonder about the middle of the second bar. So could this be one idea? And, I find that you sometimes emphasize the middle of the bar a little bit too much, and I think it'd be wonderful if it could be even more elegant sounding. Try it. Yeah, I think you need to use less bow. So like a whole bow, maybe just a half bow. So if you so use bow division for your phrasing. Try it again. For me, it could be even lighter. I like how you play this one, and I think it'd be a little bit more similar. Great, I liked that beginning very much. If we look a little bit further in the theme, now these notes, can they not be emphasized in themselves, but can they lead from to, and can these to lead to the E, and in other words, make sure that you don't put everything into every note, but make them make sense together. Try this bit from Dolce. Do you have Dolce? myself. I think it's a bow division question again. So maybe not the whole bow. Then you have more freedom with the dynamic if you don't use the whole bow. This is up bow, right? No, it's down bow for you. I think it was down bow for you. Make sure that you use very little bow at the beginning of these notes, so that you can grow, you can do the swell. Try it. Good. Yes. Very good. And now we have a character that we haven't had before, right? This really very articulated and sparkly place. And I think you're doing it already better than in the video, but when you go to the tip, make sure that you still hear a rest. So I can hear your rest here, and not always. That's one thing. So make sure that they sound the same no matter where you are on the bow. And then maybe take a look at the dynamics again. Piano. Forte. So it can be quite wild, I think, this crescendo.
From where should I?
Maybe right on. Yeah. Okay, the articulation is definitely better. You can almost feel like you're bouncing out of the string with the little dot always. So then you make this kind of shape with the bow, even at the tip. But the crescendo, I still find quite, maybe it's a zoom crescendo. But if you could exaggerate it, so you really make it a bit more demonic or wild. Isabella, do it one more time, and remember the articulation at the tip, so you get a really sparkly short note. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the idea. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time, and I have a few more places that I think would be interesting to touch upon. One is the this place, which to me is so much like a ballet scene.
Yeah.
Is that your image of it too? And if you can imagine the girls with the pink fluffy skirts there, do you also have the swells? So it can feel quite free, or let's exaggerate it for now, and then very articulated again. Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah, you go. Good. But I think you can keep this dialogue longer, or the two different characters, also when you play here. And make sure you don't get too intense too soon with the... Yeah. And I'd love for you to do this, start at the same place one more time and see if you can get even more air into the sound. And no air in this place. Try it. Yeah, so finally the girls take more and more turns and pirouettes, and it gets quite wild and yeah. Could you try this place from your... and see if you can again get a very crisp articulation. Maybe play it slightly slower once to really articulate every note. Yeah. Two things. Can this be more like an upbeat? So more like that. And then again, more flexible and more not as heavy in the bow. Yeah. See if it can be more of a transitional place. So it comes down a little, comes back up, and brings you back to the first part. Yeah, I liked those waves that you created now, and then the waves get bigger and bigger, and I think more excited rather than slower. So when you get to this point, it'd be great if you could just completely let go and don't hold back the tempo. See if you can press very little with your left hand, almost like you're playing on harmonics. Right there. Good. And it'll be easier for intonation if you don't stick out your wrist. I think you can work on like coming down more like this rather than this.
Yeah.
And maybe the last thing we can do is can you play from right there and see how, it's very fast, but then it gets slower and slower. So again, it's a transition that I think could be more organic. I think you're a little bit too fast at this moment. Yeah. See if you can play from the F sharp and really gradually come down. even slower. I think the rhythmic relationship, and I think it's composed that way that you're going from very fast notes to very slow notes. Yeah, take a look because it's an eighth note. So this could be even slower in comparison. That's it. That's the idea. I saw that Cecily turned her video on, and I think it means our time is up. But I hope you can use some of the ideas and apply them also to much more of the movement. There's so many places that I think if you go about really first finding the character and then looking for it in your practicing, and you know how we tried it with technical means to get to the musical result that you want. But I think you can do a lot of thinking about characters, and especially the transitional parts I find quite challenging in this movement. So thank you for playing.
Thank you.
You play so beautifully, Isabella. Thank you for joining us. I have a
Thank you.
question about this, and it's maybe on my, and it's for both of you. It's on my mind because, like I said, like I really am learning this for the first time in my life, and I wish I'd learned it when I was Isabella's age, because then I'd still be able to play it. But now I'm coming to it much later, and actually with a huge appreciation for it. It's kind of interesting, having heard it so much of my life, and now finally looking at the music and seeing things like the first phrase starts piano. No one plays that piano. So my question is, how do you dare with an orchestra to really bring these characters out in what are actually a lot of really soft dynamics in the movement, and what a special thing to be able to do. So I'm kind of putting that out there as a thing. How do you do it? What do you do?
Well, the opening is really a good point. I think it's all often when people start with a really big sound just to come in really strong, and I find it so beautiful when it comes out of this mysterious place. But of course there it's not a balance issue. And then later on in the, like, maybe you're talking about the second theme. Yeah, I mean, he writes piano con molto espressione, so I think it does need, of course, a bit of core in the sound, but with the wonderful ensemble, you can, I think, play almost any dynamic.
Yeah.
Especially these days when only a quarter of them can play.
Good point. Well, beautiful, Isabella. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to move now to Klara, who has some Glazunov for us. This is the Glazunov Concerto. And Elisabeth and I were talking about what is the first movement of the Glazunov Concerto, because this piece is really one long thing. But we have the first section, which is probably the first movement of it, in her video. So.
Bravo! Beautiful.
Thank you.
Where are you? Down there. You're a very expressive player, and I enjoyed listening to you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would like to look at vibrato and see if we can get more variety and more color in your vibrato. I think you have a good general vibrato, but I think it could be more varied and more specific to the different moods that you have in this bit of the piece. And by the way, it's really, the structure of it is really something, isn't it? And so a lot of people say that the second movement is actually this bit. Is that how you think of it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that comes the development, and it's very interesting the way he composed it in that way, but not easy to distinguish the different moods, right? I think he's really saving for the last movement, which is such a contrast in every way. Yeah. So let me ask you, do you practice vibrato? Do you have vibrato exercises that you practice?
Not really, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I do practice it on scales, but not only exercises for vibrato.
Right. So when you practice it on scales, you play scales with vibrato?
Yeah, with and without, and I try to vary them.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. So one thing that I was thinking is that I think in your wrist you could be a little bit more you could let the arm motion go more through your wrist, so that this way you would get kind of a mixture of an arm vibrato and a hand vibrato. Do you want to try it once? Take your violin in your right hand, and just try like shaking your arm, or you can do it this way too. Yeah. Shaking your hand, so your arm shakes your hand, and can you feel how the movement goes through the wrist this way? Yeah. So there's still an arm movement in the vibrato this way. Of course, it's very exaggerated, make for a double bass vibrato. But the wrist is really free, and I would love to see that in your vibrato more. So in a place like I think it could have a little bit more of a hand arm vibrato in it, and maybe even the theme of the second movement as well. And then the other thing that is good to practice, and there's some good exercises for it, is just the mobility of this front joint. I don't know what it's called. The one that should move when you vibrate. And it helps, of course, to not to press too hard onto the string. I don't know how much pressure you use when you put the fingers down, but if you can put the fingers down very lightly, almost as if there's a little bit of air under the string, and then the finger will move more easily. And you could try this one. So put the finger down just enough to get a clear sound. Yeah, that's good. And try it with a bigger amplitude now. So almost too wide. And see if you can be very relaxed.
I cannot hear you.
Now, I'm back.
Yeah.
Can you try the second finger? Sometimes that's even easier, and you can almost fold the fingers under just for fun for now. Yeah, and now remember how you shook your hand with your arm? Can you try this? That's the idea. This is not for just tonight. I think it would be a long-term project and kind of just experimenting with sounds in the vibrato. But I like to give myself tasks, like play a scale that sounds like so I will try to find that sound in the scale also. So you could practice your scales very musically this way. And then there's one more point that I'd like to make about the vibrato, and that's the timbre of the different strings, which I think you could be more aware of. Like when you play on the G string, it's like a lower human voice, and the E string, of course, needs a slightly narrower vibrato, or sometimes a lot narrower. And I think when you start here, it would be great to hear the pulse of the vibrato a little bit more, as if you're imitating a lower human voice, and just relaxing the wrist and this joint in the fingertip, I think will get you there. But make sure that you hear it in advance exactly what kind of sound you want. Do you want to try it in the opening?
Yeah. Should I?
Yes, I thought you did it very beautifully and right away. That's wonderful. And then when you come to this place, this is now more of it's a higher voice, yeah, your second string, and adjust the vibrato slightly so you find exactly the right vibrato for the sound you want to get. Yeah, that's the idea. One other point I wanted to make about the opening is that, there are these rising intervals, and then it goes, and then there are falling intervals, and they're often chromatic. And if you could feel the resistance in the ascending interval a little bit more, and so there's an intensity in that. And then feel the falling intervals like differently. Try it. I thought you did it very well. Here, I think it would mean that the B natural doesn't get an accent, but so you would really concentrate on the interval rather than on the start of it. So here too. Yeah. So falling, rising and falling. You want to try right there? I still hear it a bit accented, or maybe a little bit too strong, the beginning of those two Bs. Yeah, or you could think of it as a crescendo between the notes. So, or an intensity between the notes. Do it one last time like this. I like that. I never know if I'm muted or unmuted. But do you have questions about it this far?
I think I'm okay.
Yeah, you're definitely getting it. Can we look at this second theme? And try once, or just feel your wrist when you're vibrating, so that you're getting it's a very tender theme, isn't it? It's not intense. And the arm vibrato is usually, one gets a more intense sound with it more easily. And the hand or the wrist vibrato, or the combination of arm and wrist, will get you a slightly more relaxed sound. Try it. You want to try it even slower once and really kind of enjoy every note. Really take time to feel how it feels. It's a beautiful sound. Do you think it gets intense in the swell, or maybe it could just be a little bit more open without getting
Okay.
tense? Listen to the vibrato pulse in it. loved the beginning of it. And then as you go to the animando, it gets a little bit more intense, but not too much. And maybe even sweeter. You hinted at it. Yeah, so I think musically the animando goes until the D, and then the beauty of the D almost causes the rallentando. Could you try it like this once? And you can move it forward a little bit more. Yeah, beautiful sound on the D. I was thinking this could get faster. So a little bit more forward if you wanted to. Good. We're always taught not to bring in our wrists too much, right? That's not something we're supposed to do. But a little bit of it is sometimes more relaxed, definitely, than this. And I think you could sometimes bring your wrist in just enough to feel how this part of the hand or the wrist is really free. So, for example, this will put a lot more, I'm exaggerating it, but this will put a lot more tension on the hand, and you don't need it there at all. Do you want to try it? Good. That's a good angle, I think. Now see if you can shake your hand with the arm a little bit so you get this nice mixture of arm and hand vibrato. Very good. Very nice. Cecily, is time up?
Not quite, you have time.
Okay, great. Could we look at the slow movement, at the second movement? Beautiful sound. Can you get all the notes to have this freedom in these joints and in the whole arm? So when you play higher up, it sounds a little bit more tense. It would be lovely if you could stay in this really rich and warm atmosphere. So this would be a note. Can we just stay on this note for a moment and see? Remember to shake your hand with your arm So the movement goes through the wrist. You feel that the wrist is really free. And then see if you can press just enough to block the string, enough to get a clear sound, but it should feel almost as if there's a little bit of air under the string, between the string and the fingerboard. And you can experiment with where that border is. Where do you get a scratchy sound, and how much do you actually have to press? Very good. And also the fourth finger, can you integrate it into your song? So you can swing it onto the string almost, so you're not putting it down like this, but it's integrated in the vibrato movement. Yeah, just show me a couple more times. So it's a swinging motion like this. If I exaggerate it, it's almost like I'm throwing my fourth finger onto the string. That's it. Yeah, that's it. And then you stay on the G string a little bit more, right? All the way up to the C. Do you want to play on and just check and see how free you can feel in the left arm? Just experiment with this sound of the C, so it's very generous and open sounding, but not intense. And you need almost no pressure from the thumb, right? Because your violin is really, really stable here in this high position. So let the thumb vibrate as well. That's the idea. And then can you show us an example of a really high, so maybe if you play from 12 and now make it a very bright sound with the timbre of the high E string, and see what you want to do with the vibrato there. Look at it for a moment, because I think you can connect those notes more to get a more continuously bright and soaring sound. And then at the key change, it's the brightest moment, right? So it's almost burning, I think. Maybe we could look at this first. I think it needs a more heated, faster vibrato and very connected vibrato.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And if you want it to be faster without getting tense, you can focus the energy really in the fingertip. So you don't feel it so much coming from the whole arm like you did on the G string when it was very relaxed, and should still be with the arm, of course, but you can feel almost like you have electric fingertips. Can you try it? Play slightly slower and connect the notes very intensely. Good. And what do you want to do with the bow there? It's a big forte sound, right? Can you connect
Yeah.
the left hand and the right hand with the energy? Good. The places I think that need a little bit of work are the shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can vibrate until uh, just before the shift. That's better. Do you play three here? Maybe. It doesn't seem completely comfortable.
No.
Do you want to try shifting onto four, onto the D instead? And keep connecting the vibrato. It seems easier for intonation. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cecily, how are we doing?
I think we need to move on,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Clara, you sound so beautiful, and I think it's a real testament to your how hard you've worked on this piece that Elisabeth is sitting here talking about the most beautiful melodies ever written for the violin, and completely leaving all the passage work in your very capable hands, because this piece kind of oscillates between these incredible melodies that are so beautiful. I mean, how many pieces can you think of that you get three melodies that gorgeous in the first, 4 pages or whatever it is? But then in between them, it's devilishly hard. So really well done, beautifully,
Thank you.
beautifully done. And also, I just have to say, I know several of my students are working on vibrato things like this, and I know that I'm working on vibrato things like this, and it's so wonderful to hear. Actually, I think everyone should feel at least, you know, like it's something we all have to work on, and connecting note to note and shaking the hand. And just the other day, I was asking myself, well, is that a hand vibrato or an arm vibrato? Well, it's both. So that thank you for bringing that up. I think it's a question that we all kind of look at. So very cool. Thanks, Klara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Beautiful playing.
So now we're going to switch gears and move to some Bach, and jump across to the UK for Bella, who's going to play the first movement of the A minor sonata, the A minor solo sonata for us.
Bravo. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Where is Bella?
Can you see?
Bella is in R.
We can't see you yet. Oh, there
No.
you go.
Hi. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're certainly getting a really calm and grave feeling into it, and grave, of course, is the slowest tempo marking, so you have a point there. However, I think it should be in relationship to the quarter notes more than the eighth notes, and I think that it would be often easier for you to get a connection in the harmonic progressions if you have a slightly more flowing tempo, because it feels often very much like you're counting it in eighth notes, but you tell me if I'm wrong.
No, that's very fair.
Yeah, you're subdividing quite a bit. So I think the bass line can always give you a clue as to how fast the music should move. And I was wondering if we could look at this more at the bass line, and I think it can also give you more inspiration for color than you're using at the moment. I think you can be more colorful and more improvisatory with it. Is that how you feel about the piece also?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a bit. I'm definitely subdividing too much, and it kind of disrupts the flow.
Oh, I can almost not hear you.
Oh, is that? Can you?
This is better. Closer
Okay.
is better.
Let me just. Okay. Yeah.
Do you also think it is basically an improvisatory movement,
Yeah.
or like a written out embellishments?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do struggle with this movement is like because it's so slow and like with the rhythm, I tend to kind of change tempo a lot, and then that means that I try and subdivide, but it's not always right, and it kind of just
Yeah, I think feeling it more in 4 rather than in 8, I think will make it a lot easier and might make all the difference. So if we look at the opening, the bass. This to me would feel very slow, right? Of course, with all the notes on top of it, it doesn't feel quite so slow, but I think that's what we should be relating the word grave to. Mm-hmm. Do you want to try it more like this once, just playing everything off of the bass line? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you played no slower than I suggested it. I think. Do you want to just experiment, and it can just be a grand experiment, and you decide later which tempo you actually love the most. But I'm still feeling a bit of subdivision. This sort of thing. So I'm thinking more like this. Can we just experiment with the tempo similar to this? I think that has a really nice flow, and to me it still feels very solemn and calm.
Yeah.
Now, let's take a closer look at what the harmonies are, or how you want to color what you're playing. Are you thinking, for example, I mean, I'm hearing you're doing this beautifully. Then does it go back? Does it go further down dynamically? I mean, there's so many ways of playing it, but I think you could be more decided.
Sure. Okay.
So this would be one way, and another way, of course. Also a perfectly valid way of hearing it. Try the beginning again and see what the harmonies make you do. Yeah, Zoom is a challenge in this way, but I think this time you came down all the way to the D, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, maybe it could start with more sound, so you have more room for your decrescendo. And you could spread this chord, not like me, but more. Maybe you start with just the bass. Squeaking E string. And here, so you go from to, so it expands before it starts coming down.
Okay. Yeah.
Try it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot. You're starting to subdivide again. So make sure you don't feel it like with two emphases in it. And slightly faster again, I think it really is easier.
Yeah.
Do you want to go on from here? And for me, it could diminuendo before you rise. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good. So now we're in a very different area. Now we're in C major, and it's so bright. Right? Or mild in the F major. And again, I think if the tempo is a little bit more flowing, I think you can fly more with the embellishments, like here. And also just try our experimental tempo again. From so more like 1, 2. Good. Especially in the beginning, I loved how you just really let the notes flow. If we look at bar 5, so this chord here is the dominant to this. So I think you could have a little bit more sort of elevated energy. In other words, and make sure that you hear the B in this chord. All the way until the C. So that, I think, puts a limit to how slow you can actually play it. So
Yeah, okay.
Let us magically imagine your B as a half note. Okay, but try to sustain more. I think you're dying away too much, so that the C, when you get to this point, that's where you want to be at your low point, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. And it should feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah. Really fly here. Lift off the ground. And I think this could be so bright to the... Because the difference... I'd like to hear that change, going to the F natural from the F sharp. Sure. Do you want to try it? And it can feel like the slightest bit of an accelerando from the C down there. Good, yeah. In this next, from bar 7, I also have a question about the dynamic shape or the coloring of it, going from it's all fine but not here. See, we go back to the dark and sad harmony of A minor, and I think you can do that more with the little notes. You can take us more from the C major to through some conflict like this. To the A minor. So be very imaginative and colorful with your small notes.
Okay.
Okay, good. I think in this slightly faster tempo, you won't need the subdivisions in the bow. I think it works the way he writes. Whichever, it could be hooked or on separate bows there. But I think it's a clear indication of what he wants to belong together, and I wouldn't break the slurs there. Sure. Try it one more time, but I'll tell you one more thing for the next. So this belongs together, right? And then that's a new, it doesn't belong harmonically. So if you can get a new sound for this, going to quite a painful or dramatic, it's a dramatic change, and I'm not sure I would crescendo so much through here. So maybe, or try crescendoing in the F sharps.
Okay.
I loved what you did with the crescendo and the F sharp, and I thought it worked beautifully. Now the harmonic rhythm is really quite slow in bar 9. And then bar 10. So the way you play those bass notes in bar 9, make sure that we can really keep hearing them. Otherwise we can't get this connection, right? So I think, again, it's a good reason not to play too subdivided or too slow, but also to really hear the bass notes and let them inspire your coloring.
Yeah.
Do you want to try it? Good. I wanted to say, I think we're almost out of time. I just wanted to look at the idea that I think is really beautiful, that you have you want to come down for this, right? Yeah. I think it could be more explicit, like more fragile, to really hear this feels very unsure, right? Yeah. Maybe play it one last time, and also I think this could also have a little bit more diminuendo. So this falling idea from G sharp to G natural.
Yeah.
One more time
from bar 9 or 7. Bar 9 or 7?
Actually, maybe 9. I like that very much. So I threw a lot of ideas at you, and of course there's so many ways to play this. But I think the one general idea that I found really important and that you really got also was to really listen to the bass line and play the whole piece off of the bass line and let yourself be more inspired by it. And maybe you have a cello playing friend who could play you the bass line all the way through the piece once, and you could improvise on this bass line. And I think it's really great to hear those notes as long notes. Sometimes he writes an eighth note where it's really good for a half note.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't hold it that long. Anyway, thank you so much for playing.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Really beautiful, Bella. Thank you for playing that. And that movement has such a incredible combination of the intricate lines being, every little twist and turn is so beautiful, but the big, the harmonic rhythm, as Elisabeth was saying, is so slow. It almost feels like you kind of move into a different kind of motion when it feels really right. And I thought you were really getting that. It's gorgeous playing.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And we have one more bit of Bach. We're going to leap across to California now and have Tianxu play some of the D minor Partita for us. The first 2 movements is what she sent us. And yeah.
Bravo. Bravo. That's wonderful violin playing and beautiful Bach. Thank you. I actually have a lot of questions for you.
Yes.
So I thought you got a beautiful kind of flowing, narrating feeling in the Allemanda. But sometimes you take a lot of time.
Yeah.
How do you decide where you do that?
Because sometimes I find the passage work is like most like triad, so I make like every triad chord a little bit more time, and sometimes lose the pulse.
I'm not sure I got that. Every
triad chord.
Can you show me an example?
For example.
Okay, yeah, this time you did it differently actually than you did it before, but that's good news. That's great. Maybe we should go through it a little bit in this way. My other question about this movement was you changed some of the slurrings or non-slurs. I mean, you added some and you took some out. Why do you do that?
For the sum of it, I feel like more articulated, so I open one or two of the slurs.
But you also added some, like in 7.
Yeah, because my score is just the slur with the dashes. So it's upside with the manuscript.
Do you have the international edition or?
No, it's from Glamian.
Yes, yeah, he added a lot of what was his opinion, and I think you should look in the back of the book where the facsimile is, and because I think the slurrings in here, almost all of them have a meaning, and especially the 3-note slurs, I think can have more personality and kind of they're basically emphases, I think, and so adding them or taking them out changes a bit more than just the bowing, I think. So I'd like to look at this place once. So there you cadence to F major, right? For me, this would be the place to relax a little bit. But for example, this, you go straight through here. And you take the time here. Which I don't quite understand harmonically. I'd like you to try hearing it more like you cadence. And then a new idea starts. And so on. Does it make sense? beautiful, and you already are playing around with the timing. And if, for example, this plays in your video, you took a lot of time there, and I much preferred it now, where there was time and this kind of doubt in the pulse, right? But you didn't quite ever stop the pulse, which I think is much better. I don't want to talk about bowings too much in this short time, but I think there's a good reason to have this. It's very uneven this way, right? You really have to save in the long slur, and then you have this freedom where he. So I think it's a beautiful change of sound just naturally if you do the original bowing, and also it's great, I think, in one bow, because then it becomes one gesture with a question mark at the end. And by splitting the bow, you kind of even out the irregularities, and I wouldn't do it. There were some places in the second part also where, for example, where I thought you took a little bit too much time, so that the music just kind of came to a stop too much. And I love the idea behind it. I think you have a beautiful idea of the sound you want to get there, but see if you can conduct yourself through it a little bit more and be a very nice conductor who gives you a lot of time, but don't ever let yourself quite stop. Where would be a good place to start? Maybe... Yeah, I think the new phrase starts here. So don't disconnect the A from the next notes. I think it can linger a bit, but not a comma. And if you could play it one more time, because this is one of the faster places. Also in your video, I thought you played it maybe slightly too fast compared to your normal tempo. But if you listen to the harmonies more... I think it'll keep you from rushing, and it's very slight, but just listen for the different harmonies. That's nice. And the harmonic probably isn't necessarily something they would have done, but it's a nice color, and if you really integrate it into the pulse, I think it works. And also at the end, I would play the original bowing. a bit more spoken is actually very good. Should we move to the Corrente? There, I have a question too. Did you consciously decide to play triplets in the dotted rhythms?
Yeah, I tend to not do, but always I feel like somehow just make it into the triplets.
Yeah, and do you know that, or I think it was C.P.E. Bach who said the dotted rhythms should be played with the triplets in this kind of music, because there wasn't this writing of a quarter note with an eighth note triplet. But I think Quantz said that it should be played after. So I think even way back, one had different opinions about it. And it was pretty consistent in your playing that you played them like triplets. If you do that, I think you could play the movement faster. And it's an Italian courant, it's a Corrente. And that's a faster one. You probably know this, yeah. So I think it could have a livelier pulse. And also, do you play the whole partita?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a big crescendo, isn't it? Like in or accelerando, one could say, where it gets more and more intense. So the Allemanda and then the Corrente is faster, and then the Sarabande is slower, and the Gigue is faster, and then comes this enormous Chacona. So I think your Corrente could have more drive. And again, I thought that you let go of the pulse a bit too much in a few places. And I think it's nice to be free, but not without a pulse. Yeah. And maybe my last question is, because you did it in both movements. So here too, you played very quietly. And also here, both times you play the dominant almost less than the tonic.
Yeah, cause when I like play through like as a performance, I will repeat the first repeat, and so after first repeat, I always feel like strong. So I want to play the second half a little bit less than the first one. I play stronger.
Yeah.
I like the contrast between the first one and the second one.
I see. I'm not sure if I hear it in there. I mean, it's just so much higher, and with the E string, I would consider rethinking that. And also, I guess I would consider playing both repeats, and then you have both options. But that's a good explanation. Do you want to try it in a slightly livelier tempo and keeping the pulse more? I think that's a great tempo, and you did it right away. That's fantastic. Again, a bowing thing. Or you could even play as it is. I bet you could do that, and it would give it more contour. I think it's a little bit too smooth the way Galamian suggests it. And yeah. As far as harmonic color, or how do you want to? so rise and resolve and those kinds of things. And then you have a longer line. All the way to here. I think you could build a little bit more and then come down later. And did you want this to be a low point in 16?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that could be a lot more obvious. And then you can really crescendo all the way to 22 though. Yeah. So give it another go, the first half, and show us the long ideas in the phrasing. Excellent. And I think it would be great then to go on forte, actually. Or the way you arrived now, you were going to do that anyway, right? Do you want to go on for a moment? And there are these two places where I thought you took maybe too much time, or it feels it's a half cadence and it shouldn't come to a full close. And also... Also here, you can stretch this beat 1, 2, 3, 1 like this, but it's not a fermata, right? Second part. I think that works very well. For a repeat, you could consider doing the opposite dynamically from... So come down with the line and then... Because right now you have twice the same, or not exactly the same, but you do a big crescendo to these 2 points. And I think you could create an even longer line if you decrescendo to the half cadence. Do you want to try it once? Maybe from here. Will be the last thing we do. That's very cool. You did something different, which I also really liked. I think that's great. I'd love to hear it one more time though, because I think I wouldn't really add a beat or two at this half cadence. And do you want to give it one go, just the way we had said, where you really come down to it and then in one big crescendo go to bar 49 as an option? Good. I like that. It's good to have options. Anyway, thank you so much. You sound beautiful.
What terrific playing, Tianxu. That tempo is just rocking. I hope you keep that tempo because it's really great. It's really exciting to hear. And what creative playing as well. Thank you so much. And you joined us very last minute, so I appreciate that as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. We are at the end of our time, and if anyone has any questions, you can either pop them into the chat and I'll read them out, or you can unmute yourself and just ask or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Ask away. We have a few minutes and a cap. Oh, Ross, good. Unmute.
Hi. Oh, I can't hear. Oh.
Hi, Ross.
Hello, hi. Sorry, I'm really late to the party. I was very busy today. But I had a quick question about your Bach. Because you were talking about a lot about vibrato before, but I missed what you'd said previous with the other pieces. But when you play your solo Bach or any other Baroque piece of music, what's your thoughts on using vibrato in terms of like color or as an ornamentation, or what do you do when you play Bach? Do you use it a lot, or what's your take on it?
I think just now in the excitement of the situation, I used maybe a little bit more than I normally would. I never know really what comes across through the computer screen. I would, in Bach, I think vibrato definitely is for color and for ornamentation and not to be used as a general part of the playing. And actually, I almost feel that way about any music. I think vibrato can sometimes not be applied, and playing can be still incredibly expressive and emotional. I think there's so much we can do with our bow arms, or with a late vibrato, or with a very subtle vibrato, rather than continuous vibrato.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else have a question? I don't see any hands up. I'm looking in my chat. Oh, Brendan, unmute you.
Hi, sorry, I'm in my dressing gown. My question is, because I was thinking, obviously, given the current situation, we're not, in ensembles and things as much as usual. So things like sight reading, I was thinking that might be something that is slightly put on the back burner. So I was wondering about, putting something in a practice session that you can use to do like sight reading exercises. And I was thinking of doing something like Haydn quartets, or just like doing chunks of that each day and just setting like a time limit. But I don't know if you've got if you think that's a good idea, or if you've got any repertoire that you might think is good to kind of use for like just short sight reading practices to do each day.
You mean if you're all alone?
Yeah. I think I've thought the quartets were, just because there's so many of them and they're so much fun, but just probably because of I was mainly thinking of the first violin part, because you've got that higher register, which is probably the bit which I would have thought might get neglected slightly more. So I thought that might be fun to do, but that was just an idea.
I think it's a great idea. I think reading Haydn even just by yourself would be really fun. And I think it would be fun to read all kinds of things, and you could maybe check out some Kurtak solo pieces, or so some of these have very, very few notes but are so expressive, and it's really fun to experiment with them. Or any chamber music part that you want to play with others, I think is great. In Germany, we're slightly farther along, I guess, with the relief of the lockdown. And for example, at our school, we have these projects now where quartets meet just at school, not to rehearse, but with the teacher, with Oliver Wille actually, and they read like minuets of Haydn trios together, and so they sit really far apart from each other, but they get together for these sessions, and hopefully that'll happen where you are very soon too.
Yeah.
That sounds like heaven to us here, I think.
Yeah. You've
Thank you.
garden recitals, haven't you? Says
Yes.
Celine.
We have another question from Isabella. Unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is quite like a general question, but what would your advice be to anyone who wants to? Because I'm 14, so I'm not like studying music yet, and I like want to study music when I'm older. What would your advice be for anyone kind of wishing to become a violinist? I know there are lots of like students studying already, but yeah, I just was wondering.
What would my advice be for an aspiring violinist like you? Like wanting to become a professional violinist? Did I hear the question right? She's muted.
Yes, basically, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing exactly the right thing. You're practicing and improving all the time. And I think what helps me really a lot is to record myself. And I think this time is so helpful in this way because I don't know if you've been recording also for lessons and sending videos like you did for this class. And I think it just helps so much to record yourself and listen back. That's one great way, I think, of improving fast. And then for me, getting inspiration from, reading about the pieces that I play, or sometimes listening to recordings, but even more reading about the music or reading about the composers and getting the background on the piece that I'm working on, I think really helps me develop my interpretation. And for example, with the Tchaikovsky, I think it would be really great to listen, to hear, to read about like the background of it and what he had gone through before he wrote the piece, and what it was inspired by, and how he felt about it, and then of course what happened. It got such a bad review when it was premiered, and Leopold Auer tried to improve it, and all these things I think are so interesting and would really inform your choices if you look at the Auer version and this sort of thing. So knowing a lot about the pieces that one plays is great, and practicing scales.
Great that you added that last bit of practicing your scales. I think we should probably wrap it up. This has been an amazing class, Elisabeth. Thank you so much for doing it, and thank you to all our performers for taking a part and taking the time to make our videos and do everything. It's really great. I can't believe how this class has taken off. That said, I have a small announcement. I'll make a post in the Facebook group over the weekend, but I'm going to continue the class through July and then call it a day. So we have 5 more classes planned, and I really hope that everyone will take part and listen and share it with your friends, and we'll get as much of this last bit of summer as we can in our really big violin class. If you found this inspiring, there are a few ways that you can help me. And I know I'm always asking for little bits and drabs of money, and that is always helpful. But as much as anything, if you can send me comments about what you've gotten out of this class, it helps me to raise funds from others. So believe it or not, when I write a letter to someone saying that this person told me this about their experience in the class, it's really meaningful. So if you could send me those notes, that would be great. It also helps me thank people who have given money, so I can write a thank you letter to someone saying something really specific and personal. That's a great thing. Please do share the class with your friends and family. And I'm not kidding when I say even $1, even £1 helps. So if you have it to spare, great. If you don't, I understand. It's a really rough time for everyone right now. Next week we have Tom Gould, leader of the Britten Sinfonia and a good friend of mine. He is going to take us through the Beethoven Violin Concerto from start to finish. We're going to have every note of it, and I'm very excited about that, of course. So that's it. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.